Tonight, the divide over faith and politics. Christianity, political engagement, and the First Amendment.
We can live together and be on mission for the gospel at the same time.
This is a new report reveals American attitudes across a wide range of religious liberty issues. Plus, President Biden's push for electric vehicles comes amid an electric car revolution.
Let's see how fast this baby flies.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. A display of politics at the pulpit, raising eyebrows among Christians and non-Christians alike. Good evening, I'm Jenna Browder. So how should Christians engage politically? For some, a political rally in a church or calling for a national religion, as General Michael Flynn recently did, are examples of taking things too far. As Heather Sells reports tonight, the Flynn incident exposes a current divide over how people of faith think about civic involvement.
A movement called the Reawaken America Tour has hosted sellout crowds in churches and other venues this year, offering a mix of worship, medical advice, and politics. It attracted national attention, however, for a recent event at San Antonio's Cornerstone Church. Video of the crowd breaking out in this chant, a euphemism for a vulgar threat against President Biden, went viral over the weekend, leading some faith leaders like Pastor Sam Rodriguez and Southern Baptist President Ed Litton to condemn it. Litton told CBN News Christians should reject the callous methods and crude sloganeering of secular politics. Another viral moment, former Trump National Security Advisor General Michael Flynn calling on stage for a national religion.
So if we are going to have one nation under God, which we must, we have to have one religion, one nation under God and one religion under God.
Rodriguez, who commended Flynn for his years of government service, told CBN News Michael Flynn is constitutionally and morally wrong to advocate for one religion emerging out of America. Religious liberty serves as the central firewall against totalitarianism. Flynn later defended his comment in a statement saying he's worried about religious persecution. Wheaton College's Andrew McDonald says he understands that many Christians are concerned about the secularization of our culture, but that they shouldn't want the government telling them what to believe.
I don't think they should have that power, and I think one of the greatest geniuses of America is that we don't have to do that. We can live together and be on mission for the gospel at the same time.
Conservative author Rod Dreher says one religion would gut the First Amendment and be a disaster for Christians.
If we have to have only one religion in this country, who's to say that religion might not be some form of wokeness, which is a lot more popular with the younger generation than traditional biblical Christianity.
Cornerstone Church told CBN News that while it allowed Reawaken America to use its space, it does not endorse its views. Reawaken's Clay Clark told CBN News he couldn't speak to Flynn's comment, but defended his use of the Let's Go Brandon chant at Cornerstone, saying many pastors use their pulpits for political purposes. In recent years, Christians have struggled more with the mixing of faith and politics, what some call Christian nationalism. It's a difficult line to navigate, keeping patriotism and politics separate from love of God and places of worship. Heather Sells, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Heather. And here with us now, Tony Perkins, president of the Family Research Council. Tony, welcome. Good to see you. So let's start just by talking about faith and politics. You know, many Christians, as you know, are very active politically, very passionate about a lot of issues. But Tony, when does it go too far? I mean, we're now talking about Christian nationalism.
When does it go too far? We should ask the question, where does it begin? First off, our hope is not in politics. Our hope is in the person of Jesus Christ. We're engaged in politics not because we're looking to gain anything from government. Government is not going to save us. We're looking to get involved in government so that the church can do its role, and that is share the good news of Jesus Christ. And so I think as we see the increasing secular nature of our government and becoming more hostile toward religious faith, you know, there's sometimes those lines are blurred. But for those who follow the Lord Jesus Christ, our role is to be salt and light in the world around us, making room for us to be able to live out our faith in such a way to impact the lives of others. That's what we're looking for in government. We don't want government to mandate it, but we don't want government to mandate that we can't live for Christ either.
Yeah. Tony, do you think a lot of this started with former President Trump?
No. No, this has been going on since the moral majority. I've been around a long time, going back to as a student at Liberty University, you know, when Dr. Falwell began the moral majority. I wasn't there then, but I watched it from a distance. And look, they come up with these different, the religious right was kind of a title that they thought was derogatory, but then it was embraced as a badge of honor. So now they've come up with Christian nationalism because it has negative connotations. As long as there are Bible-believing Christians in America, they will be involved in the government of their country. We're called to be as such. Now, again, it's not because our hope is in government, it's because we're to be an influence upon everything around us.
Tony, I want to ask you about something former President Trump recently said in an interview with ABC News. He called it common sense for January 6 rioters to chant, "Hang Mike Pence." I'd like to get your thoughts on that, Tony.
Well, you know, I agreed with the president on almost all of his policy decisions. I didn't agree with him on a lot of his political decisions. I think January the 6th was a big mistake to call people to the nation's capital, given all that was transpiring and happening. In fact, after the election, I tried to get to the president. I was blocked. Don't know why, but I was blocked from talking to him about this. But I think there should have been a point where the president pivoted away from his election to the broader issue of election reform and election integrity. But I think the nation was just on pins and needles at that point, and I do not think it was a good thing to bring people to our nation's capital. Now, that said, I don't think the president's responsible for what happened on January the 6th. I don't think he wanted that to happen, and I don't think he inspired it either.
Tony, just about 30 seconds left, but Let's Go Brandon is something we hear pretty often these days. Quick comment on that, if you can.
Well, I was actually one of the first Christian leaders to speak out in opposition to that. One of my biggest social media posts, a lot of reaction to it. I think it's wrong. We should be praying for our leaders. I disagree with almost everything this administration does, but I'm going to pray for them. I'm not going to curse them because that's what God tells us to do.
All right, Tony Perkins with the Family Research Council. It's always good to see you, Tony. Appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thanks.
Well, the American political landscape, as you know, can be incredibly divisive, especially when religion enters the fray. But according to a new survey, most Americans appreciate religious voices in the national conversation. In its latest Religious Freedom Index, just out today, the Beckett Fund finding 62% of Americans agree. People with religiously based opinions on controversial topics should be free to voice them in public. So here now is Caleb Lyman, Director of Research and Analytics at Beckett. Caleb, welcome. Really interesting study that you guys did here. This is the third edition of the Religious Freedom Index. Why is it important for Beckett to put this out?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Beckett puts out the Religious Freedom Index each year for two reasons. Really, one, we saw that there were so many polls out there about religious liberty topics, but none of them really took a holistic approach to religious freedom. Religion interacts with so many aspects of people's lives naturally. We wanted to be able to create an instrument that's able to take a similar approach and holistically look at the full breadth of religious liberty issues. And two, we wanted to be able to track changes in opinion over time. You know, with whatever is a hot button issue of the year, we get plenty of polls, but we aren't really able to see how the larger cultural dynamics that are taking place impact people's views of religious liberty. So each year we try to put out this survey that combines our index, which is made up of 21 questions, and additional questions that are about the contemporary issues that are being faced by religious liberty, to try and create a narrative and share a narrative with people about what's going on with religious liberty in America and how people's opinions are changing and forming over time.
Well, one big issue involving religious freedom is, of course, the religious exemptions to vaccine mandates. What did the index find on that topic?
Certainly. So with vaccine mandates, we found that more people are actually supportive of businesses allowing exemptions to vaccine mandates than not. But one really interesting thing that we saw with a subgroup of those responses was that those that have religious coworkers, those that have coworkers of faith, are actually even more likely to say that religious exemptions should be allowed in many situations. So it was a plurality that said, it wasn't quite a majority, it's just a plurality that said that religious exemptions be allowed for vaccine mandates. But among those that had religious coworkers, a very strong majority said that you should allow religious exemptions. And we think that's really encouraging to see that people that are of faith, that have coworkers of faith, there's a sort of warming effect there as opposed to chilling effect. They empathize with those coworkers and they understand where they're coming from.
Caleb, what surprised you most about this study this time around?
I think one thing that really surprised me most was a really significant increase in the support of people who say that religious organizations that do good in the community should be just as eligible as non-religious organizations to receive government funding. So this is an issue that we see a lot. And there was a 6-point increase this year among those that said, yeah, you should treat religious organizations the same as non-religious organizations when it comes to government funding contexts. And in some generations of younger generations, there's actually been a really marked increase each year. So Gen Z respondents have increased their support for that position 5 points or more over the last 3 years. So it was really encouraging and surprising to see both of those.
All right, Caleb Lyman with the Beckett Fund. A great study that you've put out. It's very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Well, fallout over Facebook's safety measures. One state filing a $100 billion lawsuit. We'll show you where next on Faith Nation. Well, the fallout from whistleblower revelations in those so-called Facebook papers, not over yet. Ohio's Attorney General has launched a lawsuit against Meta Platforms, the company formerly known as Facebook. It claims the company repeatedly misled the public and investors about the harmful effects its products have on minors. The lawsuit seeks more than $100 billion in damages and demands significant internal reforms. Meta says the suit is without merit. And joining me now, Kara Frederick, Research Fellow in Technology Policy at the Heritage Foundation. Kara, great to have you with us this evening. So at the heart of this lawsuit is the notion Facebook misled investors over harm the site can cause. I know you used to work at Facebook and have spent years in the tech industry. Do you think the site and its newly renamed parent, Meta, are dishonest?
You know, I think this was a rebranding exercise when it came to Facebook now becoming Meta, sort of like Google did with Alphabet, but clearly Facebook has a big PR problem following them now, especially regarding the Wall Street Journal expose and the whistleblower documents that were leaked. But what surrounds and why people are saying Facebook is being dishonest, in particular the Ohio AG, is the fact that Facebook conducted a bunch of studies, internal research, that really found that their products were harming especially young users. And they knew this, and they still moved forward with plans to create an under 13 Instagram. It wasn't until the Wall Street Journal actually exposed them through the whistleblower documents that they said, okay, well, we'll give a little pause here. So bottom line, Facebook knew their products were harmful and they kept going anyway. And in particular, they kept going to target young teens, young adults, and even preteens as a new demographic to advertise to. So that to me is inexcusable. They knew, they kept going. They only stopped once those documents got out in the open.
Yeah, we saw, the study that it's very, Instagram in particularly, very harmful for young girls. Kara, should the government be doing more, like filing suits like this one, to help rein in the company?
I definitely think there's a role for governments at all levels to play. State governments in particular, the federal government too. States are traditionally the labs of democracy, right? So let's let them run. I'm really intrigued by what Florida Governor DeSantis is doing when he wrote into law that no Zuckerbucks could be used for election interference. So that's one way of doing it, reining them in through these lawsuits. Another way of doing it, the federal government can also reform Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act in 1996. And when it basically gives these platforms freedom from liability for what's on their platform. It renders them platforms, not publishers. Yet if you take a look at Twitter and you see all of the editorializing and the labeling they're doing, particularly that doesn't redound to the benefit of conservatives, they're clearly publishers and they should be punished. They should be open to lawsuits in those instances. So federal government has a role to play here, but those states, I love that they're leaping out ahead. They're taking action. They're responding to the grassroots and to parents that are fed up and saying enough is enough. These devices, these platforms, they are not helping the souls of our children, and something needs to be done to rein them in. Good on the states for moving out on this.
Kara, just a few seconds left, but I want to ask you, what concerns you most about Meta and its various platforms like Facebook and Instagram moving forward?
Oh, Meta is a whole bag of worms. It is, as Christians, we know that we are body-soul composites. What the metaverse seeks to do is remove our bodies completely. The Federalist wrote a great article how we're supposed to worship in the metaverse now without our bodies. That is completely antithetical to being a Christian. So what these companies, what this is doing to our souls, it's dehumanizing us, and it intends to. That's what concerns me most, and we should resist at all costs.
All right, Kara Frederick with the Heritage Foundation. Thank you so much, Kara. It's good to see you. Well, automakers are saying goodbye to gas-guzzling engines, but are drivers ready to flip the switch? That story next. Welcome back. Well, President Biden continues to tout the newly signed bipartisan infrastructure bill, today traveling to Detroit to highlight provisions for electric vehicles. The bill includes $7.5 billion to help build a national network of EV charging stations. The president wants 500,000 plug-in stations across the U.S. But during the presidential campaign, he said that it would cost double what's included in the infrastructure bill for it. A muscle car with no engine under the hood. The Mustang Mach-E is part of the new wave of electric cars about to sweep the nation. So what about that famous Mustang roar? George Thomas took a spin to find out firsthand.
Should have seen this coming. A stampede unleashed 55 years ago.
Is the electric vehicle revolution finally here?
The all-electric Mustang Mach-E.
After years of attempts, the world's big auto giants,
introducing the next all-electric super truck,
and dozens of startup companies,
the future,
are betting big that the electric car is here to stay. Joe Wiesenfelder is executive editor at Cars.com.
We could be at a new point of acceptance for electric vehicles.
52% polled in a Car Guru survey say they plan to own an electric car within the next 10 years, up from 34% in 2018. GM, Volvo, and Jaguar positioning to capture a piece of the market by going all electric in 15 years.
We're going to see much more of the types of vehicles that Americans are already most interested in, which is small SUVs.
Mustang aficionado Ken Kirk says tying Ford's Mach-E SUV to the iconic sports line is a bold move. He already drives a 2018 GT, then took the 2021 all-electric for a test run.
To put that pony on another vehicle and call it a Mustang, I think they did a really good job.
Ford and other car companies chasing Tesla, which right now dominates the U.S. EV market.
Tesla basically has revolutionized automotive industry.
Vitaly Katsenelson, author of Tesla, Elon Musk, and the EV Revolution, says Tesla's innovations forced car makers worldwide to rethink their business models.
Tesla made an electric car, and then people realized electric car is actually a superior vehicle to internal combustion engine car.
I love the way the car drives. It handles wonderfully.
Skip Bowman couldn't agree more. He's owned one for 3 years and says he'll never go back. He's not alone. 4 out of 5 of all electric cars bought in 2020 were Tesla.
They don't advertise, but yet they're doing really, really well. And why is that? It's because the car is very stylish. It has that punch. This car can beat practically any car on the highway.
Sales and reviews for Ford's Mustang Mach-E have remained solid since it came out late last year.
Let's see how fast this baby flies.
So I wanted to see for myself. And it wasn't bad, though I missed the growl of the Mustang gasoline engine.
Let's be clear, gas engine cars aren't going obsolete anytime soon, but there are big challenges facing electric cars. For example, there aren't enough places around the country where you can charge an EV car like this. And then there's the issue of the battery range. How far do you have to go before you have to juice up? And finally, the sticker price. Cars like this are typically more expensive than vehicles that are powered, similar vehicles that is, that are powered by gasoline engines.
Ford and others are tackling those concerns.
That's one thing that I think Ford Motor really thought about when they introduced the electric car. They want to make it as affordable as the normal Mustang GT to attract that consumer that loves the power and the speed of the muscle Mustang.
President Biden's massive infrastructure bill calls for electric charging stations across the country. Jeff Lyash's group in Tennessee is already moving with a plan to put one every 50 miles along the state's roads and highways. TVA is also teaming up with 5 other power companies to create a charging network covering the South, Midwest, and Atlantic coast.
We hope to have the first of these chargers in service before the end of the year and have the project completed sometime next year.
So with dozens of new vehicles set to hit the American roads this year, the question is, can car dealers convince drivers that EVs are the future, despite some of the concerns consumers have about switching to electric cars? George Thomas, CBN News.
Still ahead, a hunting season cry for sanctuary. And finally tonight, it's open season for deer hunting in Michigan. But one 10-point buck turned to breaking and entering to help find some refuge. Take a look at this. The deer smashed through a window in this church. When pastors spotted the animal in the sanctuary, they barricaded the hallway to keep him corralled, capturing the whole thing on camera. The fugitive eventually escaped through a window, but pastors say he left strengthened, turning to the Lord to face his battles. And that'll do it for Faith Nation this evening. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.